Of course, the most important application of the surrendering technique is the one that has been already mentioned in the previous videos, which is to surrender your negative emotions, no matter what negative emotion we are talking about, to surrender all of them, to get into the habit that every time you experience a negative emotion, you surrender it. If you just do that, spiritual progress and psychological progress will be very fast. So why bother with this list that I have of other applications to surrender other type of mental objects? Well, because sometimes it's handy to know this, that you can surrender other mental objects, and it can accelerate your progress even more. When you surrender a negative emotion, as it has mentioned in previous videos, underneath the negative emotion there is other type of mental material with a combination of different mental objects. The emotion, the negative emotion, is like the tip of the iceberg, and that's the beauty of the surrendering technique, that you don't need to have great powers of introspection to just see the tip of the iceberg. And the tip of the iceberg is just a negative emotion. You know that there is a lot underneath. But the surrendering technique works by surrendering the tip of the iceberg, and then you are giving with that authorization, using free will, to the one consciousness to do the job and to clean whatever is underneath. But sometimes consciousness will move in a specific way that will show you what is underneath. And it might be a different mental object, not a negative emotion. It could be a negative belief. It could be a thwarted desire. It could be an expectation that doesn't need to be there. And when consciousness shows you that, in one way or another, then it's an invitation for you to surrender that mental object too. So this is why this list that I'm going to share with you is useful. And you can use the surrendering technique to surrender any of the mental objects that I'm going to mention now. You can surrender any negative thought that you become aware of. If you see a negative thought in the space of awareness arising there, bang, you have the possibility to surrender that negative idea. You just insert it in the same template in the space where you used to insert the negative emotion. So basically it will read something like this. This negative thought, blah, 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 is surrendered to the divine today completely. It's surrendered completely, and so on, right? You already know the template. It's very simple. The human heart can have very lofty, beautiful desires, but it can have also some negative, dark desires. The tendency towards goodness is prevalent in most human beings. The heart tends to move towards love, cooperation. and so on. But despite this natural tendency towards the light in the majority of the population, right? Despite that, in the human heart, there could be some thwarted desires. And if you catch one, a negative desire, you can surrender it using the surrendering technique. If you catch in your heart the desire for revenge, or you realize that you don't have a good desire towards somebody to be successful or happy, instead of blaming yourself and making it into a big deal, you simply surrender that desire. It has the advantage that you will not experience guilt, because you will realize that there is, parallel to the negative desire, there is also the positive intention to let go of that, the desire to let go of that. And you will reinforce that positive desire with the surrendering technique. In that way, you are giving an authorization to the one consciousness to do the job and clean the heart, which is not something so easy to do with your little ego strength. The forces of the ego are very limited. You can also surrender attachments of all kinds. Attachments to your possessions, your car, your house, your partner in life, your family name, your own name, your body. Very good one. Surrender the attachment to the body. Surrender the attachment to the mind. Surrender attachment to any possessions. So, at this level, the technique is very helpful too, because if we want to live a life free of attachment, which is a happier life, the surrendering technique can help you to move fast in that direction. But if you try to do this with psychology or some other type of technique, it will be quite difficult. The ego doesn't have that power. So don't try to do it with your ego. You will likely fail. Do it with the surrendering technique. You are surrendering the attachment to consciousness, to the one consciousness. And that in that way you will see results at this level. Now this is a very good one. Surrendering distorted beliefs. Distorted negative beliefs about yourself or about the world, about life, can really mess up your life. Therefore, use the surrendering technique to surrender any belief that you have realized that is making you suffer. Once that awareness comes and becomes evident that a particular belief is making your life difficult, is putting you down, or is creating problems in your life in one way or another, in relating to others, who knows? Or is the belief a belief that was born during a traumatic experience that is completely distorted, right? What do? Use the surrendering technique and you surrender that belief. as you clean the mind-body organism from its negative problems, quite a few coming from past traumas, your life becomes much easier. So this is a way to use the surrendering technique to treat trauma, which is to surrender the belief, the distorted beliefs that arose from a traumatic experience. As well as, of course, you can surrender any belief, not only the beliefs that are coming from traumatic experiences. You may have acquired beliefs that were very distorted just by being in contact with people that were having twisted thoughts, right? Or twisted beliefs. So you simply surrender those beliefs once you become aware that they are part of your system. They are not yours. These are programs, but they are part of your mind-body organism. You are the consciousness, that is the awareness that is seeing them. But once you see them in the mind-body system, get rid of them. Clean the mind-body organism from that debris. If you have been in contact in the past with ideas that were negative, because you had friends that were very negative, or because you were in some group that was very negative, it doesn't matter. You immediately identify these negative beliefs and surrender them one after another, and you will see that in a short period of time you will be free of all this mental material. It's bullshit material, right? Another very interesting and practical application is to surrender expectations that are making you suffer. Expectations can have a serious impact in your happiness. A life free of expectations is a happier life, definitely. So when you see expectations, then just use the surrendering technique and surrender them. Kind of similar, but at the same time slightly different, is the surrendering of your expectations around results coming from your actions. If you are putting effort in a certain direction and you have expectations of rewards as a result of your efforts, expectations that things will turn out in a certain way, then those expectations it's very important to surrender them. This unique practice leads to a state called karma yoga. And it's a high practice which you attain the ability to function and work towards a goal without any concern about the results. This is a very valuable attainment spiritually, because in this world most people are working towards goals because of the reward that will come. So they are fixated in the results, and that triggers anxiety and worries and preoccupation, concerns about when this will happen and how it will happen. And that's not a way to be happy during the time that you are working and doing your job and your service to humanity in life. You simply do what you need to do and leave the results of your actions in the hands of the divine. Again, you do this with the surrendering technique. You surrender your expectations. You surrender the results. You leave the results of your activity towards the completion of a project, for example, in divine hands, and then you are relaxed. It makes a huge difference in life. You can create a mountain of suffering around expectations regarding the results of your actions. Be free, live a free life, and use the surrendering technique to attain this high spiritual state where you are unconcerned about the results of your actions. It's called the path of service in the West, and it's called the path of Karma Yoga in the East. And it's not easy to attain that. You need divine help to reach that point. So use the surrendering technique and enroll the one consciousness in helping your mind-body organism to be reprogrammed so that you can attain this neutrality and this inner freedom that is immensely valuable. Obsessions and worries are kind of similar mental objects. When you're worrying about something, you're obsessing about that something. And it's not you, it's the brain. The brain is obsessing about that. You are the awareness that is looking at the obsessions, but it's creating suffering, right? So why not cleaning the mind-body organism from that debris? What do? You surrender the worries. You identify what is the theme that the mind is worrying about, and you surrender it. You surrender the obsession. You identify the obsession, you give it a name, and you surrender the obsession. Your life will be much easier once you get rid of these unique themes that your mind is capable of obsessing to death about. So make your life easier again by surrendering your worries to the divine. Whenever you identify an addiction in your mind-body organism, which is not you, the mind-body organism has a tendency to be addicted. So you realize that there is an addiction there to food, or to specific food, or to cigarettes, or to cannabis, or to who knows what. You surrender the addiction, right? Now, addiction can be really stubborn, so you may need to insist and insist and insist until you get the blessing and you get the help that you are asking for. So don't worry if you relapse again into the addiction. You keep hammering the addiction with the surrendering technique. This is well known in the 12-step programs. They know that the newcomer will fail in the beginning until finally they will become steady and sobriety will come. Now, if you have a heavy addiction, I would recommend that you go to a 12-step program, that you don't use the surrendering technique as an excuse to do not participate in a 12-step program that will give you the support of a group and will give you the possibility of changing your friends, which is a very important part of breaking free from an addiction. Changing your friends to friends that are in the same agenda that you are, meaning attaining sobriety, right? So don't use the surrendering technique as an excuse to do not go to the 12-step program and through the 12 steps. You go to the 12-step program, but at the same time, you have here a tool that you can use to reinforce your efforts in the 12-step program with your group. An interesting difference between the surrendering technique and the philosophy that is behind it, compared with the 12-step program, is the following. When you start practicing the 12-step program, so when you go to one of these groups, one of the first things that you are asked to do is to step forward and to say, I am an addict. I have to recognize that I am an addict. And it's very healing at that moment because it helps you to get out of denial, which is one of the worst aspects of addiction. Unless the denial is broken, then you cannot go into remission. So, the surrendering technique starts with a different premise, which is based on Advaita. And the premise is that you are consciousness, that you are not the mind-body organism, and you as consciousness, you are free. Essentially, consciousness cannot go into an addiction. You cannot be an addict because you are the one consciousness that is everywhere in the universe. And here you are functioning through a mind-body organism that mind-body organism happens to be an addict. The mind-body organism is the addict at that moment until it's healed, right? It's a transitory situation. So, but it doesn't matter. Don't use this as another excuse to do not go to the 12-step program if an addiction is bothering your mind-body organism. Just know the difference. That when you step forward and you say, I am an addict, you can also say, this I that I'm talking about is really the mind-body organism. I am not the mind-body organism. I am the divine one consciousness looking through it. If you have awakened to your true nature, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. And you will know that it is true. And last but not least, in fact, this is the most important mental object that we need to surrender. Consider, begin to surrender your identities. Now, what are your identities? Anything that you identify yourself with is a false idea. What you are is pure consciousness. And that one pure consciousness has no identity. Zero. No identity whatsoever. It just is. It has isness, but it has no identity. It doesn't require or need any identity. So, what type of identities are we talking about? Well, identification with your name, identification with your profession, identification with your spouse, identification with your university degrees, identification with possessions. I am the owner of this and that is an identification. Anything that is in the form of I am this is an identification. If you say I am young, that's an identification with the state of your body as being a young body. If you say I am an old man, that's another identification with the body at a different stage of life. If you say I am hurting, that's I am this, that's an identification with the body also and with the sensations of the body. We human beings are experts in creating identifications. They are all false. And this is exactly what is separating you from the truth about yourself, from your divinity, which is free of identifications. So I haven't found any technique that can do this work so effectively. Surrender your identifications and be free, right? Because what is left is free of identification, is what you are really. You remove the identifications and what is left is you, the real you, your true nature. So keep on working at surrendering your identifications. Any identification that you see arising, surrender it. Identification with your race, with your nationality, with your family, your name, your last name, your age, with roles, like the role of a father, the role of a mother, the role of a son, the role of a grandfather, the role of a grandmother. I am a grandmother. No, you are not a grandmother. You are playing the role of, you are doing grandmothering, which is different. You are pure consciousness. That's the only identification that is true. The other ones are false. And consciousness doesn't even need that term, right? It's what is left when all identifications are gone. So use the surrendering technique to become free. That's what freedom is about. Freedom from identifications. Whenever you create an identification, then you need to defend it and protect it. And then you are in a state of uneasiness internally. If you create the identification with I am a professional, for example, yeah, a professional, because you may be good at something and then you call yourself a professional around that line of work. Well, but if at some point someone challenges that and say, oh, you did a lousy job, you're going to say, oh no, I'm a professional, you know, and you will be upset because that identity was challenged. So we create identities, be prepared, they will be challenged by life, not by somebody else. Life is challenging them to make you realize that there is an identification there that you can surrender and then live a free life. You don't need these identifications to be happy. Okay, I think I covered everything, and I'm going to keep talking in the next 2 videos about applications of the surrendering technique. But here you have quite a few, right? Take care.